If you want to know exactly when an empire is about to fall, you don't look at its military, you look at its money. In the summer of 2024, a silent earthquake fractured the very foundation of the global economy. You didn't feel it. Your bank didn't warn you. The mainstream media was too busy laughing at a viral internet rumor about a 50-year-old Saudi Arabian treaty expiring to notice what was actually happening in the shadows. They told you the death of the dollar was fake news because there was no physical contract with a ticking clock, but their arrogance blinded them to the data. The dollar isn't dying because a piece of paper expired. It is dying because the rest of the world has quietly, ruthlessly engineered a replacement. We are watching the real-time unwinding of the greatest economic weapon the United States has ever held. The rules of global wealth have just been permanently rewritten, and the mathematical consequences for your bank account, your savings, and the future of the West are now unavoidable. To survive what is coming, you have to look past the headlines and look at the hidden plumbing of the global economy. For half a century, the global rule of money was brutally simple. If a country wanted to buy energy, they needed to hold US dollars. Economists call this system the petrodollar. It isn't a separate physical currency. It is simply the undeniable reality that the world's most critical resource, oil, has been exclusively priced and traded in American money. Whether Japan was buying oil from Saudi Arabia or India was buying natural gas from Qatar, the transaction had to be settled in US dollars. This created a massive, artificial and permanent global demand for America's currency. This petrodollar system became the hidden architecture of the American empire. Because the whole world was mathematically forced to absorb its dollars just to keep their economies running, it allowed the United States to print trillions of dollars out of thin air, run massive national deficits, and export its inflation to the rest of the planet. America's greatest export was never technology, cars, or weapons. America's greatest export was the dollar itself. But there is a fatal flaw in being the world's absolute banker. Eventually, the temptation to use that monopoly as a weapon becomes too great to resist. The true catalyst for the death of the petrodollar was not a date in 2024. It was a single, unprecedented decision made in February of 2022 after Russia invaded Ukraine. When the United States and its European allies froze over $300 billion in Russian central bank reserves, they intended to cripple the Russian war machine. But they accidentally sent a chilling message to every other sovereign nation on earth. The leaders of Saudi Arabia, China, India, and Brazil watched as a G20 nation had its national savings deleted with the push of a button. In that exact moment, the illusion of the safe haven dollar shattered. The global South realized a terrifying truth. If you hold your wealth in US dollars inside Western banks, it isn't really your money. It is a conditional permit granted by Washington. The petrodollar relied on absolute trust. When that trust evaporated, the world's most powerful commodity producers instantly began searching for an exit. When people realized the dollar is losing its absolute dominance, they immediately try to guess what single currency will replace it. Will it be the Chinese yuan, gold, Bitcoin? The truth is, there will be no single successor. The era of the single financial hegemon is over. The future of money isn't a new paper currency, it is an entirely new technology. The real replacement for the petrodollar is already running. While the West was arguing about fake expiration dates, nations like Saudi Arabia and the UAE officially joined a platform called Project mBridge. This is a multinational central bank digital currency platform developed by the Bank for International Settlements and China. mBridge is not a bank. It is a custom-built, blockchain-based bypass designed specifically to engineer the US dollar out of global trade. To understand how the world will operate tomorrow, you have to look at how a single barrel of oil is bought today. Historically, if China wanted to buy oil from the Middle East, the payment had to route through the Western SWIFT system. It had to touch a US correspondent bank, be converted into dollars, and be subjected to Western compliance checks. It took days, cost massive clearing fees, and Washington could monitor or block the transaction at any moment. In a post-dollar world, that entire architecture is obsolete. Through platforms like mBridge, a buyer in Beijing purchases oil from Riyadh using wholesale digital currency. Smart contracts execute the trade instantly, peer-to-peer, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No Western bank takes a 3% cut. No American regulator monitors the ledger. Global trade is transitioning from a system backed by the promise of the US military to a system backed by cryptography and physical commodities. The global South will no longer need to hoard US dollars just to participate in the global economy. And that is exactly when the trap springs shut on the American consumer. What happens to the United States when the world no longer needs its money? We experience what macroeconomic analysts call the liquidity boomerang. For 50 years, foreign nations took the dollars they earned from selling us cheap goods and oil, and they reinvested those dollars by buying US Treasury bonds. They essentially funded the US national debt, keeping the American domestic interest rates artificially low. But as countries shift to trading in local digital currencies, they will stop buying American debt. But the US government still needs to borrow trillions of dollars every single year just to keep the country running. If foreign nations stop buying US debt, there is only one entity left who can: the Federal Reserve. The central bank will be forced to print the money to buy the government's debt themselves. This means the inflation the US successfully exported to the rest of the world for half a century comes rushing back home. For the average American citizen, this doesn't mean an overnight cinematic collapse of society. It means a slow, agonizing mathematical bleed. The cost of imported goods, energy, and housing skyrockets. The government can no longer afford to run multi-trillion-dollar deficits without hyperinflating the currency. America will face the ultimate financial reckoning. It will have to start producing and exporting actual physical value again, because America can no longer simply print the money to buy it. At that point, Americans will finally be subject to the same economic laws of gravity as everyone else. We are not heading toward a sudden apocalypse. We are heading toward a brutally bifurcated global economy, a velvet iron curtain, drawn not with concrete, but with digital ledgers and commodity contracts. On one side, the United States and Europe, operating on a legacy debt-heavy dollar system. This bloc faces a fatal vulnerability. They consume far more physical resources than they actually produce. On the exact opposite side, the BRICS nations and the global South. They may not control the world's banking software, but they control the physical earth. BRICS controls the vast majority of the oil, gold, and rare earth minerals required to build every smartphone and electric vehicle in the West. And they will now trade these assets on independent ledgers. When these two worlds interact, the dynamic of global power completely flips. Historically, if Washington didn't like a nation's politics, they simply sanctioned them, cutting them off from the dollar and starving their economy into submission without firing a single bullet. In a post-dollar world, that weapon is permanently disabled. If the West sanctions a BRICS member tomorrow, that country will simply log into mBridge and sell its oil to China using digital currency. The sanction won't crash the target's economy. It will create a massive supply shock, making energy and electronics infinitely more expensive for Americans. The punisher becomes the punished. The United States will remain a dangerous economic force, but the exorbitant privilege of owning the global casino is over. The world has called America's bluff, and the chips on the table are no longer paper, they are physical. The death of the petrodollar will fundamentally reshape the wealth of the 21st century. But to truly understand the sheer magnitude of what America is losing right now, you have to understand how the US acquired this unnatural superpower in the first place. The system that is currently falling apart was born out of pure desperation, classified backroom deals, and a brilliantly ruthless strategy executed in the 1970s. I broke down exactly how the petrodollar was originally engineered in this video right here. Click on your screen to see how the United States pulled off the greatest financial magic trick in modern history. The illusion is fading, but the history is unforgettable. I'll see you there.